Well, joining us for more from Bethesda, Maryland is David Des Roches. He's an associate professor at National Defense University. Professor, Biden told President Xi that China would face consequences from the U.S. and the wider world if it supports Russia. But so far, China has stayed relatively neutral. Do you think that it is likely to lend support to Russia at some point?
I don't think in a meaningful way. I mean, when you look at China, how China views the world, there's always a tension between the desire for trade and mostly trade with the West, which has made China, powerful, and then there are strategic imperatives, which, would like to see a thumb stuck in the eye of the West. But I think they stand to lose a lot more on the trade front than they would gain from any sort of preferential access to Russian energy or something like that. I think that the Chinese strategic thinking plays a very long game and realizes that ultimately the power of the Chinese market will dictate Russia's provision of raw materials to China, and that's pretty much all they can provide that China wants is raw materials, and that it's really the trade with the West that is the basis of Chinese prosperity and has to be preserved.
Is this kind of diplomatic warning from Biden likely to be effective at all with China, or do you think China is just going to do what it wants to do?
Well, I don't think they'll do what they want to do. I think they'll do what they assess to be in their own interest. I think it does. I think it does have an impact. I think that the Chinese have been taken aback by the scale of the sanctions and the relative unanimity of Western sanctions. I think that they were very, very surprised to see Russia's, they had their so-called safe pile of money, $630 billion that they had set aside, in case they were sanctioned. And they saw that, at least half of that, and most likely a lot more, was frozen. The Chinese equivalent is in the trillions, but they're concerned about that. And so they'll probably start trying to sanction-proof themselves, just as the Russians did, try to set up alternative payment systems, things like that. But at the end of the day, investors who make financial decisions that they think will pay off for them, they don't trust the Chinese system or the Russian system because basically they're not governed by rule of law. So I think the West, the United States in the lead, and then other countries, Britain, France, Switzerland, will remain the financial system of choice. And that means that China is in a vulnerable position and will remain that way.
Do you think, though, that China would see the same level of sanctions that Russia has if it were to support Russia? I mean, China is a far different animal than Russia when it comes to the global economy.
Yeah, good question. There are some issues that, China does provide a lot of stuff, but again, the advantages that China has are access to its markets and then relatively inefficient or relatively inexpensive production of finished goods that are mostly designed in the West. They're trying to move on to that, with things like Huawei building cell phones and computers and things. But at the end of the day, those commodities could be embargoed and the West could substitute them much more easily than it can substitute for, say, the Russian energy. So, I think China is greatly concerned. There is not much that China produces that the West cannot live without. Right now, Putin is in a relatively stronger position because of Western reliance on his energy exports.
All right, we'll leave it there. David Des Roches joining us from Bethesda, Maryland. Thank you.